is the reality we live in the actual reality? But what is reality? Could we say it is what we detect with our senses or with the help of technology? But if we would say so, then what about the period when microorganisms were not known? They were real at the time, of course, even though they were not acknowledged. And what about our sky? Does it look like this? Or like this? Perhaps like this? Or this? It turns out that all of these are real pictures of the exact same region of the sky, but the cameras used to take them captured different wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. But would a non-informed person consider this our real sky? I'd say most probably not. So we see that defining reality is not so easy. My own understanding of reality happened to be challenged when I was very young, and that one experience made me become a researcher of paranormal phenomena and non-ordinary reality. But I must say that is somehow a challenge for me, because as a researcher, I see how complex it is to explain this sort of phenomena, and even more complex it is to find concrete evidences. But as a person, I cannot deny the experiences that I had. So that's a kind of a dilemma. And I deal with it thinking, this is something that needs further study. And I try to contribute on this. My experience happened when I was very young, about 7 or 8 years old. An uncle and aunt of mine went to a trip to São Paulo, a big city I had only heard about at that time. But a few nights later, during the night, during my sleep, I felt myself floating upwards. And somehow, I ended up in São Paulo, and in a room where my uncle was lying in bed, and I saw he had some little tubes inserted into his nostrils, and a bag with a liquid that would be inserted into his arms. And I also saw something even stranger, that he had a thin, clear tube that was connected to his abdomen, as far as I could tell, to a glass jar that was placed on the floor, which would hold a slightly reddish liquid. That blew my mind. I didn't have a clue what that was, because I am from a very small town in Brazil, which you can see here. This is the whole town, as compared to the little part of São Paulo you saw before. But wonderful people there, but at that time, almost 50 years ago, well, we had no bookstores, no libraries, no movie theaters, of course, no universities, but I must say I had a very happy childhood, because I grew up with 6 siblings, always playing around, but we had no illnesses in the family. And we didn't have either money enough to have a TV in our house or to buy books. So I had never seen anything like that before. When they came back from their trip, I just said to my aunt, hey, I saw Uncle Gino lying in such and such room, and I described what I had seen. She was baffled, just changed subject. But later that day, I overheard her telling my mother, how on earth could Nanci have known that, if not even you or anyone else knew he was going for a bladder surgery, because we didn't tell anybody, we didn't want you to worry about it. So that experience, as well as others I have had, compelled me to seek further studies in this. And I found out that this experience was called an OBE, or out-of-body experience, which is a phenomenon, as according to the current model, in which the consciousness moves away from the human body, being able to experience a reality that is subtler than this ordinary one. So in my search for serious studies, I found that science was, maybe still is, I'm afraid, far from understanding or even acknowledging a reality that is beyond the boundaries of this standard material world. So I thought, how are meaningful experiences, such as mine, examined? And I decided that one day I would join the small group of individuals who were dedicated to studying it. Among the body of works that I researched, the one that I found to be among the more scientific at the time was that of Robert Krukl, because he compiled thousands of OBE accounts in order to compare them and see if there were common elements. And he concluded that these experiences are not a result of beliefs of any kind and are independent from cultural aspects. Now, well, we must say that interpretation of the experience, yes, that is influenced by one's beliefs, or maybe because unavoidably most individuals would interpret their experiences according to their belief system. But this is where current research on OBEs and maybe expanded states of consciousness comes into play, because it may help reveal which elements make an experience reliable. And I'd say that education on the topic could also reduce this degree of subjectivity in the interpretation of the experience. There had been a number of surveys and laboratory experiments in controlled conditions to investigate the OBE. I have also conducted several of them with results published, interesting results, but no conclusive evidences yet. I would love to share them here with you, but we don't have time. But perhaps I can at least share with you what are some of the common sensations that one would experience when in partial or complete separation to the body or from the body. I myself experienced many of these sensations since I was very young. For example, I vividly remember moments when I was relaxed, just lying in bed, and I would feel a very strong vibration inside my body, unusual, powerful, as if all my cells were connected to some sort of electricity or being activated by a live energy. And I came to learn later that this vibrating sensation is referred to as vibrational state, and is quite common among those who have had OBEs. In many instances also, I would see my body, but like from a third-person vantage point. And especially when I was a kid, in a childlike manner of thinking, I would wonder, how can I be sleeping if I am awake? Because that was totally different state from a dream. But I didn't know that was an OBE, of course. Common sensations also are that of floating, swaying, sometimes falling, jerk awake. But a stranger sensation that I have had many times was that of feeling I couldn't move my body, as if I were paralyzed. Well, I wouldn't call that exactly pleasant, especially when you do not know what it is. But I came to learn later that this is a natural sensation that is part of the first stages of detaching from the body or returning to it. These are just some examples, but I must say that fear of these sensations may hinder the OBE occurrence. I would like to say that all my out-of-body adventures were very enjoyable. However, sometimes, in my regular waking state, I would sense some sort of subtle energies or invisible presences around me that made me scared as a child. So this led me to research or study sensitive kids to find out why they experience this type of phenomenon, how they interpret them, what sort of consequences they would face both during childhood or later in adult life because of this, and how parents and society normally react to their sensitivity. But I must say that it's obvious, not only kids have out-of-body experiences, as adults we can have them too. This is a natural phenomenon, a phenomenon that can be, it seems, arguably learned and developed. So it's not only special people who can have it. But the problem here is, how do we go about studying this type of phenomena with true scientific spirit? To start with, we must stop just dismissing the phenomena. or saying there's something wrong with the person because these are not conventional perceptions. And we must acknowledge that there may be facts about human manifestation that we don't know or understand. And we must search for explanations with no presumptions or preconceived ideas. So far, most of the academic research has been dedicated to the study of the so-called physical world, which is of essential importance, of course, and must be the first step. However, if we even consider the possibility of the existence of a reality that is subtler than this one, but just as real, even though it may escape our regular senses, we must find ways to research it. If OBEs allows the direct observation of it, then maybe until proper technology is developed, OBEs are the natural tools because they would allow researchers to witness this reality and verify its possible interaction with ours. If we were ever to get to this point, let's imagine we could have this type of research. What sort of consequences that would bring to science? Well, this knowledge could bring very useful insights into many different domains of scientific research, from medicine to physics. In turn, this could promote a scientific view that would acknowledge us as our individuality as individuals, as consciousnesses that exist beyond the brain, which would encourage the integration of variables and factors that are not strictly physical into the scientific process. So, for example, medicine. Medicine could benefit from learning or identifying when these more subtle elements could be interfering with patients' health, or maybe inexplicably curing them. Physics. Physics could examine phenomena and their outcome, taking matter and energy into consideration from a multidimensional perspective. But we face three big challenges, at least three, in all of these. First, how can we separate those who only dream, fantasize, imagine, or maybe have brain characteristics that gives them perception that they consider to be non-physical, from those who have real experiences with lucidity, awareness, clarity of thought, and detachment from preconceived notions or beliefs? Well, probably what we need here is to identify what elements separate real, non-ordinary experiences from fantasy or brain creation. But without acknowledging the phenomenon, not even that first step scientists can take. Second, we also need to learn how to separate or distinguish serious scientific initiatives from unsubstantiated information, or worse, I must say. Because unfortunately, there are individuals or groups that altogether disregard the basic scientific principles or the scientific knowledge when studying the so-called non-physical phenomena. This is not good, because besides not furthering scientific progress at all, this may give the impression that all of those who dedicate themselves to study this non-ordinary phenomenal reality have the same attitude. This is not the case, I can assure you. And we also need to develop appropriate methodology to investigate this intangible reality and its related phenomena. But the thing is, at this point, we could wonder, but why bother? Why bother at all to study them? If science is about understanding ourselves and the universe, or pursuing knowledge of the natural world, then verifying this reality could enlighten us about what we and the world actually are. And in turn, this could maybe change the core paradigm upon which our society and knowledge are based. But it's interesting to remember that OBEs are not only a tool for gathering scientific observation, it's also a tool for personal exploration. What would be some of the personal uses of OBEs? What would you say? Checking up on the spouse? Or spying on the neighbor? Not quite. At least was not for me. In my case, maybe I share with you how I feel it about my case. In my case, I feel that I have a better sense of what to be in this world is about. Somehow I feel that I follow my own personal principles. I don't need an external or imposed set of beliefs to guide me. And my principles are a result of conclusions and observations that I have made also during these experiences. The first conclusion, I guess, logical one, natural one, is we are not only this body. This idea may refer us or make us think about to the hypothesis that we do not cease to exist at the point of death. But please understand, I'm not saying this so you take this to be your truth. I'm just saying what is my relative truth at this moment and how I deal with this reality or what I think about it. Also, although this tends to give us a sense of tranquility and peace of mind, at the same time, it kind of gives us an urge or desire to take meaningful steps in our lives so that when we finish this life, at the end of it, we look back and we feel that we have accomplished the greater goal that we had always had. I also observed that there is some sort of maybe multidimensional energies that interconnect us all. This notion tends to make us think about the consequences of our actions and eventually leads to the realization that being ethical really matters. These are not only my conclusions, because research on OBE and near-death experiences points to the same results. But what would be the social implications if we had a society in which the majority of the individuals would know about this, but know for a fact, based on their experiences, not just following a set of rules, know that the world is not purely physical? What would this imply? If we just conclude from what we discussed, probably they would polish their personal principles, mind the lasting effects or consequences of their actions, forming a society with greater humanitarian and planetary concerns, where goals would be more than only becoming wealthier, maybe more about altruism. And while I have a few seconds left, let me propose that we let our minds run free for a moment and conjecture. Would we one day evolve from Homo sapiens to Homo projectius? Meaning we would become individuals who would, or beings, who would naturally project outside of our bodies, having also some sort of multidimensional awareness. Well, that's an intriguing thought, at least. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.